tonight, National Human Rights Commission recommends 28 police personnel for prosecution as it submits its report on human rights violations by the defunct Special Anti-Robbery Squad and other units of the Nigeria Police Force. A bill seeking to legalize power rotation across the 6 geopolitical zones in the country suffers setback in the Senate as it fails to pass second reading. The Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank of Nigeria raises interest rates from 14% to 15.5% as it battles to rein in rising inflation.
And on business news tonight, Nigeria's central bank directs banks to meet cash reserve requirement within 48 hours or face immediate exclusion from the forex market.
On sports news tonight, former Super Eagles captain Mikel Obi retires from football, ending an 18-year career including 10 seasons and 8 major trophies at Chelsea.
And from Abuja, the nation's capital, Federal High Court sitting in Abeokuta, the Ogun State capital, nullifies primaries conducted by various factions of the People's Democratic Party in the state.
International news from London. The UK's Defence Ministry says Vladimir Putin is likely to announce the annexation of occupied regions of Ukraine into Russia within days.
It's never too late to answer for one's actions. Well, that's the position of the National Human Rights Commission as it recommends 28 policemen for prosecution. Well, this is one of the action points in the report presented by the independent investigative panel set up by the government in Abuja today, where the Executive Secretary of the NHRC, Mr. Tony Ojukwu, says beyond compensation, there is a need to hold the indicted officers accountable.
After 2 years of painstaking investigation into the activities of the defunct Special Anti-Robbery Squad SARS and other units of the Nigerian Police Force in relation to human rights violations, the independent investigative panel of the National Human Rights Commission are here to submit their report.
We have called to be grateful to the Commission.
The chairman of the panel commends the federal government as he calls for the implementation of their recommendations.
After almost 2 years of hard work and commitment by the panel, it is our fervent prayer that the federal government, as a matter of urgency, look into this report and our recommendation with a view to implementing them. It is suggested that the Victim Compensation Fund be set aside to settle the awards of these compensations.
After his brief remark, the chairman presents the report to the Executive Secretary of the National Human Rights Commission.
Wow, what do we have to say to that?
The Executive Secretary promises to see to the full implementation of the report.
The Commission is also pleased that the panel has made far-reaching recommendations on other spheres of justice delivery and human rights enforcement, including the payments of judgment debts. I want to assure you that the Commission will continue to advance its mandate in promoting, protecting, and enforcing human rights in Nigeria.
According to the fact sheet presented by the Secretary of the panel, 28 policemen were recommended for prosecution, 25 of them for dismissal, 15 for disciplinary action, and 4 were recommended for reduction in rank. Other decisions of the panel include the payment of compensation to 39 petitioners for extrajudicial killings and 7 for enforced disappearance. 9 persons received compensation for unlawful arrest and detention, 30 others for torture, cruel, inhuman and degrading treatment, 6 people for threats to life, another 6 for confiscation of property, and the last 3 were for abuse of office.
Both the recipients and the number of petitions.
With the presentation of the report done, the National Human Rights Commission assures Nigerians of its full implementation.
Now, power rotation remains an unresolved issue in Nigeria's political lexicon. And the Senate in its sitting today revisited the idea of power rotation among the geopolitical zones of the country, but the debate was inconclusive. The bill sponsored by Senator Abamoro of Benue South had earlier passed the first reading. Now, while some senators argue that it will bring about unity and a sense of belonging for all, especially ethnic minorities, others say it will go against the nation's constitution. Our correspondent, Delia Moyeni, reports.
The 1053 first reading taken.
The Red Chamber of the National Assembly comes alive as senators reconvene for plenary.
On this very vital national issue,
as the senators get down to business, Senator Abamoro is called on to lead the debate on his bill, which is up for second reading.
In Nigeria, a multi-ethnic and diverse nation, the need to alternate power across the zones and governorship among the senatorial districts of the country cannot be overemphasized. This is because power rotation can be a veritable tool for our national integration, unity, inclusion, peace, and political stability.
However, some senators vehemently kick against the bill, which makes Senator Abamoro hurriedly withdraw the bill through Order 42 of the Senate Standing Rules.
See, Mr. President, we don't need to codify. Why are we waiting to codify this into law? Charity begins at home. Why waiting to codify this into law? Why don't we do what is right? Why don't we do what is needful? The North haven't had power for 8 years. Power should come to the South. So they should tell their presidential candidate to step down from the race.
No matter how we try to allow our sentiments to drive our desire for a very united, equitable country, we equally have a responsibility to balance that with the oath of office we have taken as senators of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, i.e., to uphold, protect, and defend the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And where the Constitution specifically has prescribed the requirement for emerging into each of the offices created by the Constitution, it may be very, very difficult for this Senate to, by way of legislation, upset that provision of the Constitution.
After plenary, the Senate Committee on the Independent National Electoral Commission screened the 19 nominees sent by the President as resident electoral commissioners. However, the nominees from Sokoto, Ebonyi, Imo, and Benue states have petitions against their nominations.
There is no way state government would have suspended me, come back and take me and begin to give me these positions, making waves. It's in record, it's everywhere. I never was suspended.
I'm not a member of any political party. I have never been a member of any political party. This is just one of these fake and fabricated and false petition, which is aimed at possibly tarnishing my image and possibly seeking to prevent the distinguished senators from approving my nomination. Today,
the Senate passed an amendment to the Court of Appeal Act, and in this new act, there's a provision to increase the number of judges from 90 to 110. Delia Moyeni, Channels Television News.
Well, power outage is not strange in Nigeria, with many resorting to alternative energy sources. But today, members of the House of Representatives were treated to this sad reality during their sitting, forcing them to adjourn plenary. The outage, which occurred about 2 hours into plenary, lasted a few minutes, but the lawmakers were unable to continue with the sitting. Our National Assembly correspondent, Terry Kumi, reports.
The first plenary session of the week in the House of Representatives. Before getting down to the business of the day, lawmakers consider and adopt a motion of urgent national importance on the need for the Federal Ministry of Works and Housing to ensure immediate resumption of reconstruction of the Abuja-Kaduna Expressway.
Worried that the situation on the Abuja-Kaduna Highway has become a drawback for the Nigerian economy that, if not immediately rectified, spells doom for the economy and social life of Nigerians, contrary to Section 15, subsection 1 of the Constitution, which mandates the Nigerian state to provide adequate facilities for and encourage free mobility of people, goods, and services. The House resolved to call on the Honorable Minister of Works and Housing to urgently and without further delay direct the contractor, Julius Berger PLC, to immediately return to the site and complete its reconstruction works, starting with the Jere-Kaduna stretch.
Some bills are then passed through second reading, which include the National Religious Harmony Commission Establishment Bill to provide a statutory framework for the protection of fundamental human rights of Nigerians as it relates to matters of religious freedom and liberty. The bill, among other things, seeks to provide an early warning system for government and law enforcement to detect and prevent actions liable to incite religious violence and break down law and order. Also passed through second reading is the Employees Unpaid Wages Prohibition Bill, which seeks to ensure the timely remuneration of employees, whether in the public or private sector, and improve the general welfare conditions of employment for labor in the country. Both bills were sponsored by the Speaker and some other members. As plenary progresses, lawmakers are plunged into darkness. After a few minutes in the darkness, the Speaker calls for adjournment, and lawmakers exit the chamber using their phone torchlights. Terry Ikumi, Channels Television News.
Away from the National Assembly, for the third time this year, the Central Bank of Nigeria has raised interest rates from 14% to 15.5%. Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, while justifying the raise, explains that the decision will help consolidate the impact of the last two policy rate hikes by the CBN. Well, last month, the annual inflation rate climbed to a 17-year high of 20.5% as the high cost of food items continue to affect citizens.
After 2 days of meeting behind closed doors, the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria is leading members of the Monetary Policy Committee to address Nigerians on his key decisions. The central bank governor starts the meeting with a look at how events in the international market are affecting the domestic market, leading to the bank's intervention in the real sector, rising to 9 trillion naira in 3 years. While the agriculture and manufacturing sector receives 66 billion naira in 2 months, its export facilitation program received a boost of 93 billion naira.
In the last 3 years, the CBN had injected over 9 trillion naira into the economy, in addition to offering 2-year moratorium for 10-year long-term loan facilities. The committee believed that these interventions have significantly helped to engender growth. However, in light of the persisting pressures on inflation, the committee encouraged the bank to maintain a close watch on the inflationary implications of these interventions.
The committee then raised the interest rate to 15.5% and the cash reserve ratio to 32.5% after consideration by committee members. However, it comes with a caution for commercial banks.
As long as we see inflation trending upwards, that I cannot, or that MPC cannot give any assurance to anybody that we will not continue to raise rates, because we've seen rates move recently very, very aggressively, and that is the reason we are following it up in the May, in the July, and now the September meeting very aggressively for us to ensure, to see to what can be done to rein in inflation.
The committee also considered the intervention to clear the backlog of debts owed airlines.
Yes, we will do everything possible, and we are determined to clear the backlog, and we will consistently at all the retail interventions. As long as the accounts of the banks are funded, we will continue to make the releases to ensure that the cumulative backlog is cleared. We would like to appeal to the countries where the foreign airlines are domiciled or where their flights originate, that they should please, and we please beg them to give Nigerian airlines also a chance to land their aircrafts in their countries.
news.
This is the third time the Central Bank of Nigeria is increasing its monetary policy rate in 2022, as the bank insists on an economic stability plan that is responsive to Nigeria's economic growth.
In part two, after the break, we'll get some more insight into today's decision by the MPC. We'll be joined by the Chief Executive of Financial Derivatives Company, Mr. Bismarck Rewane. That's in a moment. Do stay with us. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10, live on Channels Television Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. National Human Rights Commission recommends 28 police personnel for prosecution as it submits its report on human rights violations by the defunct Special Anti-Robbery Squad and other units of the Nigeria Police Force. Bill seeking to legalize power rotation across the 6 geopolitical zones in the country suffers setback in the Senate as it fails to pass second reading. Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank of Nigeria raises interest rates from 14% to 15.5% as it battles to rein in rising inflation. And UK's Defence Ministry says Vladimir Putin is likely to announce the annexation of occupied regions of Ukraine into Russia within days. Let's now bring you more on the latest decision by the Monetary Policy Committee. We're joined on the news at 10 by the Managing Director and Chief Executive of Financial Derivatives Company, Mr. Bismarck Rewane. Good evening, Mr. Rewane. Thank you for joining us on the news at 10. It's yet another big MPC day, and we're left trying to make sense of the latest figures. Some analysts had predicted a hike, but clearly not this huge. So please explain to us, why now and why this magnitude?
Good evening, Kayode, and good evening, Nigerians. What has happened is that the policy-making body for monetary policy in Nigeria is the Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank of Nigeria. And the Central Bank of Nigeria decided today to hike rates by 150 basis points. Cumulatively, in the last 6 months, it has increased interest rate by 400 basis points. That is 4%. That is more than the cumulative interest rate hikes in the last 10 years. Now, why is it doing that? And why this magnitude? It's doing that because one of the tools for monetary policy to contain and moderate inflation is the interest rate. However, it depends on what kind of inflation you're talking about. Is it demand pull inflation? Is it cost push inflation? Or is it a combination of all of these factors, including what you call global supply shocks? So basically, this is what has happened, and the magnitude is almost consistent with what has happened with the rest of Africa. You can see our caption of our slides is going with the flow. Nigeria is one of the 4 countries that have increased interest rates by more than 300 basis points in the last 3 months. What has been Ghana, South Africa, and some other nations. But let us go back and look at other countries in the world. The United States, for example, which had kept interest rates very low over the last 20 years, has increased interest rates in the last 12 months by more than 250 basis points, 3 times at 75 basis points, and 1 time at 50 basis points. So when you look at that, look at what has happened in the UK. So the effect of this is that you find interest rates beginning to increase, and when interest rate increases, the currency of that country actually strengthens, especially the reserve currency like the United States. So the question is, why now? If not now, when? Why this high? Because we delayed. We should have done this a few times ago in a moderate fashion. But now we have to do it. And the only problem at times is that an overdose is not a cure for a previous underdose. You have to go through the entire therapy to get the desired effect.
Well, clearly, the elephant in the room will be how this will affect the inflation. And I mean, it looks like this is a major reason for the hike. But from where you sit, do you think this is enough to tame inflation and not just mere copying from the script of other countries?
Yes, again, copycat syndrome in policy doesn't work because every country has its own peculiarities. And inflation today in Nigeria is a combination of so many factors. But the most causative factor, the most potent cause of inflation today, when we analyze it with our team, that 73% of almost all the inflation that arises in Nigeria today is because of an exchange rate pass-through. There's imported inflation, there's weakness of the currency, and there's rationing of the currency. So if there's a 100% increase in prices or 100 naira increase in price, 74 naira of that comes as a result of exchange rate. The other big causative factor is the price of diesel. Diesel costs about 11% of this, and then before you get money supply. So if you don't address the exchange rate system, which you have, both structural and operational processes of determining the exchange rate, you will end up using the wrong therapy for the wrong ailment. And the worst thing to do is to have misdiagnosis in any ailment, as you know.
So there are millions of Nigerians who received this latest hike today, and they're wondering, how does this impact on my life, my lifestyle? So help us understand this. How does this impact on Nigerians, especially on the common man, as they say?
Okay, let me first of all look at the theoretical framework. If you increase the nominal rate, which is the policy rate now today, it doesn't do anything because that nominal rate it anchors expectations. But if you do not increase the general structure of interest rates in the country, in other words, the treasury rates, the borrowing rates, the lending rates, then you will not reduce the appetite of people to consume, and the consumption which goes towards imported goods will also be there. But if you deal with the exchange rate system that you have, as a matter of fact, the most potent factor of sucking out liquidity out of the system in this country today is to adjust the exchange rate, because the economy is more exchange rate sensitive than interest rate sensitive. In other words, if you were to adjust the exchange rate to make it to converge a little bit more, right? An adjustment of the exchange rate is used to mop up liquidity and increase the amount of foreign exchange going into the market. But to do that, you need to deal with oil theft, you need to deal with so many other factors. So it's not as easy as that. But to the extent that that Nigeria as a country, the circumstances are under our control, are getting fewer and fewer and less. Therefore, we are virtually policy takers rather than policy makers. And so now, how does it affect the ordinary man? The ordinary man, primarily,
right,
because official inflation is 20.54, but actually, the effective rate of inflation in urban Nigeria is probably higher than that. It just means that because interest rates have increased, you are more likely to save money rather than consume money.
Right.
You are more likely to put your money in the bank and get interest rather than buy the Ashwebi. You are more likely to do that than spend consumption, what they call ostentatious consumption.
Well,
and that actually reduces the demand and the effect of this on other people.
Right. Clearly interesting days ahead as we approach Christmas and political activities. But we'd like to thank you so much for the insights. Mr. Bismarck Rewane is the CEO of Financial Derivatives Company Limited. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having
me.
Me.
News at 10.
Thank you.
Well, let's now head over to our Abuja studio where Terry Ikumi is standing by with more stories on the News at 10. It's over to you, Terry.
Well, hello, Coyote, and we begin with politics, and it's back to the drawing board for the Ogun State People's Democratic Party, as the Federal High Court sitting in Abeokuta today nullified all primaries conducted by the various factions of the party in the state. Delivering the ruling, the presiding judge, Justice O.O. Oguntoyibo, ordered a rerun of the primaries within 14 days, as according to him, all primaries conducted didn't follow the provisions of the Electoral Act. A governorship aspirant, Jimmy Lawal, had approached the courts to challenge the delegates list used during the primary by the Sikrulahi Ogundele faction of the party, which held at the Olusegun Obasanjo Presidential Library in the state capital. Other candidates had also approached the courts to challenge the authenticity of the Sikrulahi Ogundele-led state executive of the party in the state. But still on party politics, the All Progressives Congress has postponed the inauguration of its Presidential Campaign Council, as well as the kickoff of its campaigns earlier scheduled for Wednesday, September the 28th, 2022. The Director General of the Tinubu-Shettima Presidential Campaign Council and Governor of Plateau State, Simon Lalong, announced this in a statement today. He explains that the adjustment of the timetable and schedule of activities is in order to accommodate growing interests by various groups within the party and the campaign council. He says a new date and timetable will be communicated for the inauguration and campaign activities. A day after making key appointments to his campaign team, the presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, and his vice, Dr. Ifeanyi Okowa, are in Enugu State to continue consultations ahead of the 2023 general elections. They were received by the governor of the state, Ifeanyi Ogwanyi, after which they proceeded to a Southeast Stakeholders Consultative meeting, where Governor Ogwanyi gave the assurance that the state remains a PDP state. On his part, Mr. Atiku Abubakar reaffirmed his commitment to the restructuring of the country.
Sorry, you can't take pictures now. Not yet, not now. We will address the root causes of insecurity, including the lack of opportunities, collapse of education, climate change, and its impact on agriculture and animal husbandry, and lack of modernization of same. We shall modernize our agriculture, including animal husbandry, to help reduce the persistent clashes between farmers and nomadic herders, which have increasingly become violent. Since the late 1960s, we have had a faulty federal structure that concentrates too much power and resources at the center, thereby turning the federating states into appendages or parastatals of the federal government. A PDP government that I lead will work with the legislatures to restructure our federal system and devolve more powers to the states with corresponding resources.
Still ahead on the news at 10, we have more politics. And on business news, Nigeria's central bank directs banks to meet cash reserve ratio requirements within 48 hours or face immediate exclusion from the forex market. Please stay with us. Welcome back to the news at 10. The Benue State Governor Samuel Ortom has dismissed as a ruse the insinuation in some media reports that he has broken away from the camp of his River State counterpart, Wike. Governor Ortom gave his position after the Benue Northwest PDP stakeholders meeting in Makurdi, the state capital, saying he remains a close ally of the River State Governor, whom he believes the PDP has meted injustice to. He also calls on the leadership of the party to appease Governor Wike, as it is never too late to make amends where things are wrong.
I just came back from London with Wike this morning. We are friends. I still maintain my stand on what I said. I have not moved away from there, and I still sympathize with Wike for the injustices meted on him and our group. Politics is about interests. And where your interest is not protected, you have the right to protest. And I think that is what is happening. The party leadership have not been fair to Governor Wike based on the activities that took place during the convention and after the convention. They've not been able to deploy adequately the internal party conflict resolution mechanism to resolve those issues. And this is all that I'm saying. And I sympathize with him, and I still stand with him that let the leadership of the party at the national level do the same thing.
Meanwhile, the Rivers State Governor Nyesom Wike has brought back the state's legacy 600 aircraft that was reportedly abandoned by his predecessor, Ortom since 2012 in Germany. Governor Wike had in January this year announced the discovery of the aircraft, alleging that the aircraft was dumped by the then governor Amechi in the European country without documentation.
After a decade of being inactive and getting stuck in Europe, the Rivers State government's legacy 600 aircraft is finally back home. Bought by the Peter Odili administration in 2003, the aircraft reportedly became untraceable in 2012 under the administration of Rotimi Amechi until January this year, when Governor Nyesom Wike announced its discovery at the General Atomics Aerotech, an aircraft servicing firm in Munich, Germany. This reception at the international wing of the Port Harcourt International Airport is to officially receive the aircraft, which made landing at about 4 p.m. September the 27th. Governor Wike is then accompanied by some leaders of the state for an inspection, as he explains how the aircraft was discovered and retrieved.
When we came into power, 2015, nobody got handed over any report or handover note to let us know where assets of the state are. And for us to hear in 2008, 2019, that look, this asset is somewhere. Are you going to sell it? I was there, which asset is that? The legacy 600. And we made all attempts to see that, yes, let us see what is the condition. We spent a lot of money.
The Speaker of the State Assembly and a former president of the Nigerian Bar Association see this feat as another demonstration by Governor Wike to protect the interest of the state.
If the governor, given commitment on his own part, is able to use the instrumentality of his office and that of the people of the state, the will of the people of the state through the mandate given to him, is quite commendable.
This is another indication of indisputable fact that this governor has really determined to protect the interests of Rivers State to the best of his ability.
Some other leaders believe the retrieval of the aircraft will improve the administration and economy of the state.
That an asset that was missing and taken out by the previous government has been returned back to the state. It shows accountability in governance and it shows care for public assets.
Whatever the stories are, the aircraft is here. That's what's important. So thank God, and we pray that it will serve Rivers people well.
It's no doubt a remarkable day for Governor Wike, who has kept to his promise of bringing back the state asset, no matter the cost.
Now, following the accusation of double standard leveled against the federal government by the Ondo State Governor Rotimi Akeredolu in granting of arms license to state security outfits, the presidency has responded, saying there is no state in the federation that has been authorized to procure automatic weapons for their security outfits. And this is coming from the federal government. According to the president's spokesman, Garba Shehu, in a statement, the president has repeatedly made it clear that nobody is allowed to illegally carry AK-47 rifles or any other automatic weapons. In a viral video showing the Katsina security outfit bearing AK-47, the statement says, the vigilantes of the Civil Defense Training College were invited by the governor, Aminu Masari, to be trained for a 5-day period in the handling and operations of pump-action rifles and not to take over the responsibilities of the security agencies of the federal government. While appreciating the active involvement of states with security matters, the president, however, cautions against the politicization of security. The presidency promises that government at the center cannot afford to alienate Ondo State or any other state on the important issue of security, but urges leaders at various levels to exercise restraint in their speeches. And that's all from Abuja. Back to you, Kayode.
Well, thanks a lot, Terry. More stories now, this time from here in Lagos. The Lagos State government has taken delivery of coaches for its Red Line rail track from Milwaukee, the United States. A statement by the state's Commissioner for Information and Strategy, Mr. Gbenga Omotosho, says the Talgo 8 series trains acquired by the Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu administration for the Red Line project consists of 2 train sets of 21 cars. He explained that the trains were decoupled for effective transportation to Lagos State and will be recoupled by the rolling stock engineers from Talgo. They will also train local engineers in the state to be able to operate the train optimally. Mr. Omotosho also says the Red Line rail track will run from Agbado to Oyingbo, and each of the trains is expected to carry 1,500 passengers daily. That's when it begins operations in the first quarter of next year. The Akwa Ibom state government continues to commission some of the projects embarked upon by the current administration as it gradually brings to an end the 35th anniversary celebration of the state's creation. And the latest is a 12-kilometer road project in Udongako local government area. And to do the honors was the Edo State Governor Godwin Obaseki, who urged the people of the local government to take responsibility for the maintenance of the new road.
This is the first road project that runs from more than 1 kilometer in this serene coastal community since the creation of Akwa Ibom State in 1987. It explains why the people's joy knows no bounds as they turn out in their numbers, defying the rain to witness history. They show their appreciation to the state government for the construction of the 9-kilometer Secretariat Road, Ulyong Ediko Odweta Road in Udongoko local government area with a spur at Eyo Abasi in Oron local government area. Commissioner for Works Professor Eno Ibanga gives details of the road project.
All the quality and the character of a good road is personified in this road. I want to thank His Excellency for opening up to the Udongoko people.
A visibly elated Governor Udom Emmanuel says the road project is a deliberate policy of his administration to open up rural communities and arrest rural to urban migration in line with his second-term completion agenda.
The paramount ruler knows my spirit and he knows my love for our people. I love our people dearly. That's why he said that he knows I'm going to work till the last day in office. I want to assure you, till the last minute I leave office, I will continue to work for our people.
Prominent citizens of the state take turns to appreciate the government for making history here.
Ladies and gentlemen, His Royal Majesty is dancing up here. He is having a celebratory dance.
Nobody can shift the goalpost while the game is on. So I, as a custodian of everything, I said that is the political leader of Urunko. He has done well.
For the first time in the history of this local government, we have worked on a third road.
The special guest of honor and Governor of Edo State, Godwin Obaseki, urges the people to take responsibility for the maintenance of the road to ensure that it serves the purpose intended by government.
Please, Governor Dom has built a road for you. Is that not so?
Yes.
The road is now your own. It is now your responsibility to make sure that the road is maintained. So, local government, please help the governor, help your people to make sure that you maintain this road so that the road can last. He commissions this 12-kilometer road.
This is one of the events lined up to mark the 35th anniversary of Akwa Ibom State.
And now for the latest business stories on the news at 10, here's Teniola Oyetayo.
Banking, so easy, so simple. Dial *894# now to experience it. You first, First Bank.
Thanks a lot, Kayode. Welcome to Business News. The central bank has directed commercial banks in the country to meet its new cash reserve requirement by Thursday or face debit and exclusion from accessing the country's foreign exchange market by Friday. The CBN governor, Godwin Emefiele, gave this warning to banks at the end of the Monetary Policy Committee meeting today in Abuja, where it raised the CRR from 27.5% to 32.5%. While explaining how its latest rate hike will reduce inflationary pressure, Mr. Emefiele says the increase in the CRR is aimed at mopping up liquidity in the banking system. However, analysts say the timeline given to banks for compliance with the new CRR may unsettle some banks, as not all of them have the capacity to absorb such regulatory shocks at very short notice. Cash reserve ratio, which is the percentage share of a bank's total customer deposit, which must be maintained with the CBN, is one of the ways CBN regulates the country's money supply, inflation level and liquidity in the country. And the domestic stock market failed to sustain the moderate gain it recorded in Monday's trading session. And this is no thanks to renewed sell pressure on 17 equities. John Mekwa has the details.
Thank you so much. Welcome to the stock market report. Well, it was a brief celebration for the equities market in Nigeria as we see the bear taking over again. So what we see at the close of trade is that the all-share index is down 0.12% at 49,161.45, getting to the very close, the edge of 49,000. Of course, the market cap is lower than what it was yesterday. And then the most liquid counter, the banking counter, it managed to dominate the top trade, but Transcorp is the one that actually led the trades in volume today. 38 million is what we see that it traded at the close of trade. The activity chart looking a little bit different from what it was yesterday. Yesterday it was mixed, but for today it's all green, and we see value has made a quick comeback from just about 800 million yesterday. It's over 2 billion naira today. That's for value. Volume also is much better than yesterday, as well as the deals. Now, the Monetary Policy Committee met today and they increased both the MPR and the CRR. And so we'll be watching to see how investors will react to that. I'm sure by this time tomorrow would have had that here at the stock market report. But that's it for tonight. I'm John Mekwa. It's back to you.
Thanks a lot, Ini. Now let's take a look at the closing performance of some of the world's major stock markets for Tuesday. And that's Business News tonight. I'm Teniola Oyetayo. It's back to Kayode for the rest of the news at 10.
Banking, so easy, so simple. Dial *894# now to experience it. You first, First Bank.
Well, thank you, Teniola. On the foreign scene, the UK's Defence Ministry says Vladimir Putin is likely to announce the annexation of occupied regions of Ukraine into Russia within days. Simon Pusey has more in Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel Studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. The UK's Defence Ministry says Vladimir Putin is likely to announce the annexation of occupied regions of Ukraine into Russia within days. It comes as Russia stages a final day of voting in discredited referendums in occupied regions of the country. Here, residents in the Kherson region voting. Ukraine and the West say the result has already been decided by the Kremlin and will be used as an excuse for an illegal land grab. According to the ministry, the Russian president could make the announcement when he addresses the country's parliament on Friday. Meanwhile, the United Nations Human Rights Office says Russia's invasion of Ukraine had caused a dire human rights situation and led to a wide range of rights violations. The report, which was carried out between February the 1st and July the 31st, alleges extrajudicial killings and torture that could amount to war crimes. The Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights said that it was particularly concerned about torture and ill treatment of detainees by Russian forces and affiliated armed groups, but said there had been rights violations by both sides.
Shelling from heavy artillery, such as multiple launch rocket systems and missile and air attacks, include weapons that carry cluster munitions, were used repeatedly. The scale of damage and destruction strongly indicates that violations of international humanitarian law have occurred.
European countries are investigating 3 mystery leaks in 2 major gas pipelines between Russia and Europe. The cause of the damage to Nord Stream 1 and 2 is unclear, but authorities have not ruled out sabotage. The operator of Nord Stream 1 said the undersea lines had simultaneously sustained unprecedented damage in one day. Both pipelines have been flashpoints in the energy tussle between Moscow and Europe. Leaders from around the world have attended a state funeral in Tokyo to pay tribute to the country's longest-serving prime minister. Outside, a 19-gun salute honoured Shinzo Abe, who was shot dead in July. More than 4,000 people, including about 50 current and former world leaders, attended the ceremony. His widow, Akai, carried his ashes down the aisle in the Nippon Budokan Hall in central Tokyo. State funerals are normally reserved for Japan's imperial family, but Abe has been given the honour as the country's longest-serving PM. However, many people were critical of the decision to grant a state funeral. Several thousand protesters demonstrating nearby. They argue the event used precious state resources that could be directed towards more pressing needs. The World Health Organization says a cholera outbreak that has already claimed 29 lives in Syria is posing a danger across the front lines of the country's 11-year-long war. First linked to contaminated water near the Euphrates River, the outbreak has now spread across the fractured nation, with cases reported in government and rebel-held regions. In all, at least 2,000 cases have been reported so far. The WHO warned that while most of those affected will have mild or no symptoms, cholera can kill within hours if untreated. Kenya's worst drought in 4 decades has killed almost 2% of the world's rarest zebra in 3 months, and 25 more elephants than normal over the same period. It is starving Kenya's famed wildlife of normal food sources out in the open and driving them into deadly conflict with people. Conservationists say that without interventions to protect wildlife, or if the approaching rainy season fails again, animals in many parts of the East African country could face an existential crisis. And the Prince and Princess of Wales are making their first visit to the nation since they were given the titles. The royal couple visited Anglesey, where they lived for 3 years after they first married. It comes as Kensington Palace said there were no plans for Prince William to have an investiture, anything like his father had as Prince of Wales. In their first official visit as Prince and Princess of Wales, the royal couple visited the RNLI Holyhead lifeboat station in Anglesey, where they met crew and volunteers. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel Studios in Lagos.
Many thanks, Simon, and welcome to Sports News. A former captain of the Super Eagles of Nigeria and Chelsea legend John Mikel Obi has announced his retirement from professional football. Obi, who enjoyed a successful career both at the club and international levels, took to his official Instagram account earlier today to reveal his decision to retire from competitive games. Mikel won 2 Premier League titles, 3 FA Cup trophies, the 2007 League Cup and the 2013 Europa League with Chelsea FC. On the international stage, Obi also enjoyed immense success as he won the 2013 Africa Cup of Nations with Nigeria in South Africa. Well, the Desert Foxes of Algeria this evening defeated the Super Eagles of Nigeria 2-1 in an international friendly played at the Stade Olympique in Oran. Nigeria took the lead in the 9th minute of the first half from Term Mufi. Riyad Mahrez leveled the score just before halftime. Yusuf Tal then made it 2 on the 61st minute of the second half to hand the hosts the victory. Well, the Super Eagles will now shift attention to their next international friendly against Portugal on November the 17th in Lisbon. Well, the Nigeria Football Federation election scheduled for the 30th of September in Benin City, the Edo State capital, appears to be on course as the Minister of Youth and Sports Development, Mr. Sunday Dare, played host to 11 aspirants in Abuja. At the meeting held behind closed doors at the Moshood Abiola Stadium in Abuja, the 11 aspirants vying for the Federation's #1 position had a brainstorming session on the way forward with the Minister Sunday Dare amidst the uncertainty surrounding the election date. Well, the Federal High Court sitting in Abuja had an ex parte motion halted the scheduled NFF Elective Congress pending the hearing of the suit filed by the Harrison Jala-led Professional Footballers Association of Nigeria. And that's Sports News. I'm Ayotunde Balogun.
Thank you, Ayotunde. And the main news again. The National Human Rights Commission today recommended 28 police personnel for prosecution after it submitted its report on human rights violations by the defunct Special Anti-Robbery Squad and other units of the Nigeria Police Force. Also today, the presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Atiku Abubakar, said he would actualize Igbo presidency if elected in 2023. The PDP candidate was speaking during a meeting with the party's stakeholders in Enugu today. And that's the news at 10 for tonight, everyone. Thank you for watching. I'm Kayode Okikulu. Good night.